and welcome to Trek Central Live, in which we are now talking about Star Trek Prodigy, which we haven't for a couple of weeks because all sorts of issues, from illnesses to transportation issues. Maybe our shuttle got crashed on a random island, planet, who knows. But with me, obviously, I am Dom Paris from the Trek Central team, resident lawmaster, as some people call me, and I am joined by the one and only Starflight Baron this week. Which I guess I have to change our names because apparently I'm text Trek right now, so I apologize for that, but let me sort that out.
Yes, our members on Trek Central get to choose my name from time to time. We're not going to make it a crazy thing. So since there was a suggestion from a member, I am now Starflight Baron. So congratulations, 7 Jills ago. You got your wish. I'm so excited to see you, Dom. It's been a minute since we've been on together, and also it's been a minute since we've really talked about Star Trek Prodigy, because we didn't cover the last episode either. So I'm excited. Yeah,
and it will also be great because you weren't in Trek Central when we previously had Prodigy all that time ago.
That's right.
So yeah, it'll be great to get into Prodigy, which is really shaping up to be one of my favorite of the new Trek series, because it hits a lot of things and it does a lot and sneaks up on you because you think it's a kid show or family show, but then it does a lot with that, which I think even goes further than what Lower Decks does. So it'll definitely be very interesting to talk to you about this. Also, anybody in the audience, let us know what you thought of this episode and previous episodes, from the Borg episode, the Station episode, how Janeway and the Dauntless is catching up to our Protostar kids. And also, I'm sorry to say that Starfleet Boy, it seems you lost a husband in this episode, so we'll also talk about that a bit. But first off, what did you think of
but
this
there's Rada
episode?
too, who I'm in love with.
Yes, which you're wearing now on the subscriber shirt, is it?
Yes, there you go. By the way, Cake is Eternal, that was your idea, so credit to you. And thank you for correcting that in the audience. But I really loved this episode. I didn't know what to expect. I'm really glad I didn't know what to expect, because it's just like we saw that teaser and I wondered about these, like, this planet with the green shirts, and everyone thought, I guess, they were going to be like the Iosians perhaps, or reviewing them or something like that, because it was based on which Aaron Walke, by the way, retweeted a memo that Michael Piller sent to Rick Berman, daring him to do this like concept, and in that concept apparently Spock himself comes in at the end and sets them right, so to speak. But interesting how that evolved into this. And for my Star Trek original series watch along and discussion thing that I do on YouTube, we got to the episode Obsession, and yes, at first it's because Garavic's so handsome that I just kind of was like, oh my gosh, who's that? That definitely piqued my interest. But aside from that, it's a really powerful episode, and it's a really interesting episode that I think is not thought of often, but has a lot of good information in it. For example, we find out about Kirk's first command, the Farragut, and the captain that he served under was Captain Garavik, and his son was the red shirt Garavik, who is referenced in this episode. But then Captain Kirk in that episode, and of course this is a whole different time of storytelling, so we never see Garavik again. But at the end of the episode, Captain Kirk suggests that he wants to have some kind of friendship or relationship and relay stories of Garavik's father to him. So we all, that's now in the realm of our headcanon and future writers. Well, here we have a future writer who picked up on this. And
I think he specifically said on Twitter that he kind of felt bad or weird that nothing was done with Garavik after the episode of Obsession and TOS. And it's really great that I think Aaron Wilkie definitely is picking up on these threads that previous shows have touched on, and makes them into a very interesting tapestry. He brings them all together into one thing, and that is really what you need in these writing teams for these new shows, getting these threads and just weaving them together.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why at the end of this episode, when the Protostar is like racing to help their friends as the into this like dilithium deposit or whatever, and you hear his log, I lost it.
That log was so good.
Like overlaid. It was almost like the log started playing to fulfill his like wishes. Like it was a weird sort of meta cool in-universe thing, and these guys get to hear his like last wish as it's happening, while the Federation, not quite the Federation, but these kids who are so Starfleet and are being trained by like, Hollow Janeway to be so Starfleet, come and fulfill the promise. And it was just like, I lost it emotionally. I was like a wreck.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this
like
episode specifically works on a number of different meta levels. Where you have this core idea being, okay, we're not Starfleet, we look different, we have different uniforms, we have different equipment, we don't have the knowledge of live long and prosper being live logs and proper and all that stuff. But even though we don't know those things, or we're doing it differently, we're still carrying on what it means to be Starfleet. We may have the words mixed up, we may be doing it differently, but we're still living to that goal. And I think that very much is something which you have to take into account with a lot of these Star Trek shows now. They may look different, they may do things differently, but they're still living up to that idea of what Star Trek is.
Yeah.
And I think on a meta level, that episode really gets into it.
Yeah, I agree with that too. That's a really great point. I hadn't even thought about that. But yeah, there's so many layers to this. And then the Enterprisian civilization's really cool on top of that. Like they built this like I call it the Hanging Gardens of Enterprise, because it reminds me of like settlements, like earlier settlements that were like walled in or like fortified in some way, just for safety reasons, but they're like advanced enough where they have like they have like enough safety, or they've established enough safety where they now have like a medical facility. They're learning things. They have like a little mini college of Starfleet, a Starfleet Academy, if you will. They have like, training that's going on. You can see their habitat. You can see their like the world building is just like really great, and it's not always like told, but it's like very evident. I've watched this episode a lot, so like you're looking at the backgrounds and everything like that. And a lot of things start to piece together, and now I'm very curious, because there's a lot of cool, we know that like this civilization is like maybe 4 or 5 generations after Garavik died, or maybe 3 or 4 generations after Garavik died, and so things have been passed on, and kind of like I think someone described it best as like a game of telephone. It's like every time, every generation kind of changes it, or they have the spirit of it, but
you
they
can
don't
definitely
get the,
see that, because this information is passed down orally in the form of plays. They don't have it written down what everything is. They're like, okay, we're going to tell you the story. We're not going to read it from a book or anything. We're going to do a play about it. I definitely think that's interesting. When we do previously see in that college, as you said, they do have projectors.
Like a video, but the videos are of the plays.
Exactly. So it's still going into that. And
crazy.
They probably didn't get it written down when Garavik was alive, and then they did plays of it, and they told this story because it was an epic of how this person falls from the sky and saves them from the gallows, the evil curse. Or I guess he doesn't even save them from it. He just tells them of this thing, and then by the end of the episode, we see the final act of Garavik's play. The fact that his legacy carries on into these new people that deal with this curse, which is just beautiful, really amazing.
And interestingly, I don't even know if they have a written language yet, because everything's kind of like they're still at that oral history stage. It seems like I see like maybe I don't even think we saw pictograms. Maybe that's the play. They're at that stage where the plays are like their way of kind of like telling stories. So that's interesting. Like that they don't even have as far as I could remember, written language. Audience, let me know if I'm wrong. I don't know. Do you remember, Dom? Was there like written stuff? I don't remember if there was
I don't
anything.
remember anything written.
Yeah.
But it is then interesting to. I guess this was also a very good episode for, introducing people to Trek and talking about the Prime Directive and cultural contamination. I
Absolutely.
don't think you would really show a piece of the action to the same demographic that you would show this. Not that piece of the action is great and I would show anyone, but that
Yeah.
besides the point. So it's very interesting to see how, okay, this species probably wasn't ready for first contact, and that's why we have the Prime Directive principles. But they were still able to at least take the good from their cultural contamination, compared to the Iosians, who were like, okay, here's a book about Chicago mobs, let's emulate them. So yeah.
I need 1,000 heaters, Dom.
Yeah, and then we can play a game of Fizbin, see? Uh, yeah. And there was a lot of
But yeah.
really nice parts of this episode. And there was also some great... I'm someone who very much goes and looks for like concept art of episodes. And the moment this episode dropped, one of the concept artists for Prodigy, within a couple of hours, posted their concept art. And they were very much
Oh.
like, I've been waiting for this for 2 years to show this. And it was
That's
this
awesome. Wow.
beautiful concept art. I think I'll post it on the Trek Central Twitter account sometime in the week. So if you're interested in how things develop from concept art to on screen, make sure you follow us at the Trek Central on Twitter, however long Twitter will last. And we'll post some great concept art. But it was concept art of the Galileo, the Gallows, in the
Oh,
dilithium
I think
mine,
I've seen it.
and it
Yeah.
was like
Yeah.
really beautiful. But even in
Yeah.
this
It's pretty.
episode, it was really beautiful.
That credit goes to like I think Aaron Walkie said that credit goes to, and it does, I feel like, because I've seen him talk about it too. Benny Bone and his team, they just
Yeah.
as far as animation goes, like I watch a lot of animation. I watch like Star Wars animation, specifically like the
Mm.
Clone Wars stuff, and there's just a lot of good animation out there in this style, in this computer generated kind of style. But I think Star Trek Prodigy is the most beautiful of that
I think
group,
it does
like of that same kind of
environments
group. Yeah.
very well.
So well, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Um, I have seen some criticism about some of like the ancillary props and assets looking very generic sci-fi. A lot of that is done through third parties, where they're just
Oh, I
like, okay,
see.
we need to make a bunch of this stuff. But I think it does a lot for CG animation compared to a lot of other things.
Yeah. It's just, yeah. Overall, though, it's very much, I think it's very much high quality, if you will. And like that was one thing that we were talking about. It's like sometimes you can't really say like, there's been a lot of questions in this episode about like why they chose to use certain nacelles or why the uniform looks like a
Why they're
certain
green,
style
which
and
I see a lot
things
of
like
people
that,
in chat
like
talking about. Um,
yeah, it's true.
but I think it was not only on the plot story level of, okay, they're getting things wrong, but like we said previously, this meta level of incorporating a lot of different visuals from Star Trek. You have Kelvin-like nacelles, you have TOS style uniforms, disco style statue with the like ribbing on the shoulders, to even
Right,
the
right.
Garavik's actual uniform looking like a Beyond uniform.
Yeah.
And it, like we said, it very much gets into this concept of it doesn't really matter what it looks like, it's still Star Trek. It's still preaching that message which has been around since the start of what Star Trek means and what it means for the
And
future and what it means for us. So I think
absolutely.
it was definitely intentional that all these elements were melded together. And obviously you have the TOS aspects with the Galileo looking like it did in TOS instead of the Strange New World style Class F shuttle. When they were bringing the consoles on the Protostar bridge. It looked very much like the TOS consoles. But I think that was very intentional. And obviously we've seen some of that with, the Galaxy-class bridge looks like the Galaxy-class bridge from TNG in Prodigy. And I don't think it is the visual continuity. I think it's just that we are in an animation medium. They're just making use of all these different visuals to tell the story.
Well, yeah. And like, if you really look at it, the Enterprisian town or whatever, the new Enterprise they called it, I think, looks also a little bit like the cruiser that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan arrive in.
Yes, the Republic cruiser. Yes,
like, it has that kind of shape to it
with
as well.
the dome-like shape to it. Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah, totally. And then also those nacelles, apparently I saw this on Twitter on Jörg Hildebrand's Twitter feed. They were and I remember seeing these images. One of these CGI artists had redesigned like the Enterprise with like somewhere in between like the Kelvin look with the big hot rod nacelles and like just like a little bit more beefy nacelles. And that's Gabe Corner, and it was like a famous design that kind of like still is out there in the.
I'll have to look at that because I don't think
so
I saw
those
that.
might be an homage to that, but then there's definitely like, hints of all that. But also Aaron Walkie had a really good explanation where he says some of it is animated stylistic interpretation, but some of it is that the Kelvin universe was created due to influence from ships from the mid 2380s prime timeline. Now that the Prime universe is in the 2380s, it stands to reason there could be some parallel designs evolving.
That's an interesting aspect. How much we should read into that is definitely different, considering that the only two ships that went to influence Starfleet in the Kelvin timeline was the Narada, and I guess you wouldn't even say the
jellyfish.
Yeah, but Starfleet didn't
was
see
on the
the
Narada.
jellyfish. Starfleet only saw the Narada.
By the time of, I would posit that by the time of Beyond, Starfleet intelligence definitely got a hold of like whatever evidence was left behind from the incursion, like both the pieces that like flew off the Narada. Maybe they even got a data bank or two and were able to decode it. Like maybe they had access
there
to
was
like,
some of that in like ancillary media. And it's why the
cool.
Kelvin ships are so big. It's because they're using reverse engineered technology from the Narada and data about Starfleet ships. So yeah, we could definitely talk about that. But I think going into whether it's design continuity or just visual interpretation is a much bigger conversation, which will be here for hours, and everyone has a different
take. But it's certainly
interesting.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting because also we know from Discovery that temporal occursions do come back in reverse. Yor is an example of a person that came from Kelvin timeline into our prime timeline. I keep calling it ours, like if it's my prime timeline.
I do that as well. It's like we recently did a script on super weapons in Star Trek, which came out recently. Which I thought was a really nice video because I got to look at the super weapons of Star Trek. Because normally you're like, oh, super weapons, that's Star Wars. But looking at the fluidic space of 8472 and being like, oh, real space is in the prime timeline. It's like, that's weird to say, but yeah, so I can get you from that. One thing I did...
But yeah, I guess my point is like... stuff we never know. Stuff could have come through rifts or who knows what, there was that gigantic red matter thing event that happened at the end of 2009 that the Narada went through. We don't really know where it went.
Yes, that's a good
or all
point.
That stuff. So
obviously, I think they said recently in an interview, or I read recently, that the reason why Kirk fires on the Narada, even though it's been destroyed by the red matter artificial black hole, is to make sure that they know it appears elsewhere, so they want to make sure that it doesn't deal more damage when it comes out through wherever it ends up. So it could be that the Narada does end up coming back into then the future. Oh my god, could the Narada or fragments of Narada appear in Star Trek Picard season 3? Who knows? No. I hope not. I hope if the Narada or fragments of Narada do come back, it'll be in something else. But what was I going to say? Oh, one thing I thought which was really nice is at the end of the episode when they're opening up New Enterprise, and Janeway said, well, they say that Janeway said that rules on second contact are a little more fuzzy. And I really hope that is a Lower Decks reference to this role of second contact, which is very not as clearly defined as first contact. Second contact is to just do all the things first contact didn't do, but maybe some more, maybe some less. So I do hope that is a Lower Decks reference there, and definitely seeing the connectivity between the shows like this. You know, we'll see it later when we get Fadian O'Connor coming back, as we saw in the trailers.
I have a theory that the person who picked up
yes.
the Denobulan character... Yeah.
So I guess we should also talk about the Dauntless a little bit from this episode.
Before we go... back to the Dauntless, I just want to say that speaking of Lower Decks, Fred Tatasciore voices 3 characters in the Enterpriseian and some background Enterpriseians, and he's so good. Like he
voices Garvik as well.
And he voices Garvik, and there's differences like in the performances and the voice changes. I'm sure there was like a little modulation going on here and there.
He is such a good voice actor.
He was so good. Yeah, he's so good. It was so nice. Apparently, he'd work with this team before on like Troll Hunters and stuff like that, or some past animation things. So yeah, so it's very cool. But yeah, shout out to his performance. But now we can go to the Dauntless.
Yes. So Dauntless, we have obviously I think it was last episode or the episode before, they picked up the Diviner, and he's not as mad as he was, but his memories are still a little jostled. I would like to think that Starfleet does have the technology to help reverse Medusan influences. You know, if Medusans are a Federation member, then there are probably a number of incidents when someone has looked at a Medusan accidentally.
Yeah. And
I'm sure the Medusans are like, oh yeah, here's a medical technique to reverse this. We're sorry. But his memory is still a little jostled, and he seems to be imparting the implication that the people on the Protostar have kidnapped his daughter and the Protostar themselves, which, from his point of view, is not wrong.
Yeah.
But it's not right. It's a half-truth. And that half-truth is going to be what steers Janeway towards a manhunt, towards hunting down the Protostar instead of just rendezvousing with it.
A rescuer, yeah, exactly.
And definitely after seeing the impact of the Protostar on the relay station, and the fact that the relay station was all destroyed, how do they know that, you know, it was just the relay station which had fired on itself? Which actually would be interesting. It seems like there was no data recoverable from the relay station, which is probably a good thing, because then they would have had the infected data and infected their ship, and then it would spread.
It seems also like the living construct probably does things like that, erases its own existence if it can't fully transfer or whatever, you know, like maybe, you know, like point. You know, and stuff like that. So yeah, because and this living construct is really interesting to me too. Like, well, going back, so I wonder, are we going to see another Starfleet like facility or vessel succumb to the living construct? I have a feeling we might, and I'm kind of worried that it might be the Dauntless like itself. But regardless, I think it's really interesting where we're at right now, the stage sort of that's been set, because you have the Diviner like in the heart of like the thing that he hates, like you know, like he's like so and they don't know that.
Be interesting if when he realizes that, because I don't think he realizes it right now.
I don't think he realizes it yet either, but I think he's on his way to realizing it. Yes. Like he saw the badge and it like triggered certain things, and he was like what does he say? The intrusion, you know, he started to like get all like like he started to realize it, but then they put him out. Do you have any idea? Like one thing that was unclear to me is like the Andorian character
Tysus, Commander
Tysus
Tysus.
says doesn't sound like Chakotay, and then the doctor says something about like his fuzzy memory or something like that. But like, was that to like what was that about? Like that's a
What
little
do you
weird
mean?
line that. So like I'd have to I guess I could pull it up to be
Well,
precise,
no.
but like
So Tysus says doesn't sound like Chakotay, probably from the relay station being destroyed. I believe was the intention there. They're like, okay, the
okay,
Protostar
good.
was
That
there.
fixes that. Yeah, yeah.
Why has that happened? Tysus says doesn't sound
I was
like
infected
Chakotay.
by the
Or it was
Chakotay is the
when
diviner.
it was when the diviner said they kidnapped my daughter, and then I think Tysus might say that doesn't sound like Chakotay.
Okay, thanks. Gosh, I watched this episode like 5 times and I didn't like
It's one
clue
of
into that
them, but the implication there is saying it doesn't sound like Chakotay is on the
Wouldn't you?
Protostar. And
Right.
also the diviner himself said, I believe, in this episode, that Chakotay was taken prisoner.
That's right, he does say that.
But where is he if he's been taken prisoner? Is the really good question. And I think one of the answers to that may be Kazon related. Because we know that the Kazon have a history with Chakotay, with Seska and everything like that. So, and we saw that a Kazon was bringing slaves to Tars Lamora. So, wouldn't it be interesting if the diviner got Chakotay, and then in order to secure better cooperation with the Kazon in that area of the Delta Quadrant, they were like, okay, you can have Chakotay. We know he kind of means something to you. Because
that is
there are a
interesting.
couple of Voyager episodes with Chakotay interacting with other Kazon people, especially the childs that Aaron Eisenberg played. And I'm trying to remember the implication about Seska and his son, and was it actually his son? But that plotline was extremely complicated. That I don't remember whose. Seska died, yes.
Yes.
It's really
feel like shit.
complicated of a plot that I can't remember
I'm the
how
worst
it
Voyager
worked.
person.
But yeah, as Captain Jack says, the return of Mage Color. Yeah, we
Hey,
could
Captain
see that.
Jack. Happy
Obviously,
birthday, Captain Jack.
Also, yes, happy birthday, which was it yesterday or the day before?
Yesterday.
It was yesterday.
It was yesterday.
So yes, if you're in chat, give a belated birthday greeting to Captain Jack. Who without we couldn't do all this. So yes,
That's
happy
true.
birthday. But yeah, we've also got a lot to talk about in regards to Prodigy of where things are related to in space. Because obviously we know that Tars Lamora was on the Delta Quadrant, Beta Quadrant border.
Order, yeah.
And the Protostar has gone past a Federation relay station, which presumably is in Federation space. So are we...
Or at least on the edge
Or at least
of
on
it,
the
yeah.
edge of it. And the planet they go to, the Endoprisian planet they go to in this episode, hasn't been visited by a Federation ship in 100 years.
In 100 years.
Obviously, Federation space is really big. Federation ships, Starfleet ships can't go everywhere. And also we have the fact that the distress call on the planet was distorted by the force field around the planet, the subspace interference around the planet. So that explains why Starfleet didn't
from
get...
the dilithium deposits, actually.
Was it from the... I thought it was from the shuttle reacting... It was the plasma reacting... Well, the dilithium reacting to the plasma, which was causing the subspatial interference. Yes.
Some kind of techno...
I don't think
here.
we got a name of the planet. Cake is Eternal. But, yeah. So it definitely looks like we are in the Beta Quadrant now with the Protostar. We do have the revelation at the end of the episode that, okay, we're going to get to Starfleet, but that doesn't mean that the Protostar does. So there are implications there. Obviously, this show is called Star Trek Prodigy and not Star Trek Protostar. So we are following the kids, and I think a great way to round up season 1 of the show is for them to leave the Protostar and go into a season 2, which could be, you know, Starfleet Academy or anything like that. Especially, I definitely think that after we get season 1B of Prodigy, the real Admiral Janeway will be like, okay, you kids, you've done good. You know, I thought you were evil, but you're not. You've been living up to the Federation and Starfleet ideals. I'm going to sponsor your application to Starfleet Academy. Because we know, at least...
Even though I would not sponsor 7. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, she would sponsor 7. It's just they wouldn't let 7.
Right, I know.
Because Gwyn and probably Dal would need sponsorship into Starfleet Academy because they're not Federation members. At least with Dal, right. We don't believe so. But definitely Gwyn, the Valnakart are not Federation members. So she would need a sponsorship application to join Starfleet Academy. Bricarians with Roktok are, I believe, Federation members. Obviously, that's from beta canon sources from the New Frontier books. But
now we have introduced them, right?
Yes, but whether their same history is transferred to actual canon, we don't know. Obviously, Tellarites, they're allowed straight in. Starfleet Academy, they're a founding member, right on through. Their royalty, as Pog says. I will say I definitely didn't like when someone said Mr. Pog. I still can't deal with the fact that's his last name.
He wanted a royal Tellarite funeral. Are the Tellarite a monarchy?
No, I mean that was definitely from the fact that
no, I know that he said I'm Federation royalty in the previous. Yeah, no, I know.
But we don't know.
But one wonders
how the Tellarites are. They could be a constitutional monarchy or whatever.
Right, we've never been to Tellar Prime as far as we know, right? There's a lot of Larry Nemechek gets mad about this. I forgot about that. There's a lot of
and I think there was also a lot of talk on Twitter recently about how just diverse the Tellarites are as a species,
right?
And
which I love.
They probably come from the same genus, but they're different subspecies. But they all come under the Tellarite bracket, from the tusk-like Tellarites. To the more pig-like Tellarites, to the 5-fingered Tellarites and the 3-fingered Tellarites, all that stuff. So it'd definitely be nice to get more Tellarite content, and if we get that through Jank and Pog and through Prodigy, I'm all here for it.
And modern Star Trek, kudos, because it was always weird how monocultural everyone was on Star Trek. I would say that's it didn't bother me too much, but it was definitely it takes you out of
the alien species are very monolithic in their culture. And it's all we're all this one thing
this way. And it's kind of actually, it's, if that's true, it's dark. It means terrible things, or some, I don't know, it just I feel like diversity is the point of Star Trek. So it's this new era is representing these classic Star Trek aliens and even new Star Trek species as very diverse and different, and I love that. I think it's cool that we have so many different types of Andorians, Tellarites, not Vulcans, but Romulans. Now we know why some have ridges on their heads and stuff like that, and
there was one thing with that, which was hilarious, which I think on Memory Alpha,
I think, right?
on Memory Alpha, it says, in 2379, the whole of the Romulan Senate was from the North. And it was just great that, what happens to make all the elected officials Northern? Was there some sort of political upheaval before then? Were all the Romulans we were pro Dominion, joining the Federation with the Dominion War, and everyone was like, I'll vote you in. Better than the Southerners who were let's not join the war. Something like that could have happened. But I definitely do like that we can then be what's the political implications of the Romulan Senate being filled with Northerners? And that's a cool thing to say.
That's a very I feel like that's a very fun thing to explore, also possibly on shows like Lower Decks and Prodigy. You never know, like they could stick in these things here and there. Cake
Mm.
says there's still no explaining the Klingons. I think they
Yes,
are.
there
They're just
are.
going to. I think they're
There
going
are
to. I think it's
explaining
that.
the
Yeah,
Klingons.
yeah. I think it's
One,
gonna
you can either
happen.
say through, visual continuity doesn't mean a thing. The other thing is,
Right.
obviously the Klingon headridge virus didn't affect all Klingons. Even Enterprise says that.
Yeah.
Um, and then you could look at how I think even that some of the comics looks into this, and during the TOS era, a lot of like the foot soldiers of the Empire were just the Klingons that didn't have ridges because they were viewed as lower than those with ridges.
And I
Uh,
feel like we've talked about this on Trek Central before, maybe, but
Probably.
the TOS even establishes that that Klingons were into genetic and crazy kind of manipulation because of the Tribbles episode, where that one Klingon is disguised as a human. And then, of course, we have Ash Tyler,
Yes.
and we have so many examples of Klingons like messing with their genome. So,
Yes,
just because.
definitely. You could even look at, it could be an aesthetic thing. And during the TOS
Right.
region, they were like, you know what? Forehead ridges, not in this season. Let's get rid of it. So there's a lot of ways to explain that. Saying there is no way to explain it is just,
Right.
defeatism at that point. Because there are
Right.
so many. There's an infinite number of ways to explain it. Whether some of those ways are good or not just requires a really good writer to. And as we get back to it with Aaron Waltke, especially with how he views all the uniforms, there's a lot of discussion about, there are so many uniforms during the Nemesis to early Picard timeline. And there's an interview somewhere out there with Aaron Waltke of how he views that and how he's linking all these different threads and bringing it together to actually be really cool. And how, the uniforms that the Dauntless are wearing are part of, the Beta Quadrant contingent of Starfleet at that time. The Starfleet uniforms that the Romulan relocation project are different to show that they are under different divisions in Starfleet or different missions of Starfleet. So it's just really cool. So that there are some great ways to talk about things which at the moment appear incongruent or inconsistent, but can lead to some really great stories. And I would look forward to
Absolutely.
those stories. Especially with, I believe, them saying for Prodigy, we will eventually see Picard flashback era uniforms later in the show, which I'm looking forward to.
Oh, very cool, very cool. We could also see something we talked about. That's the other thing that's cool about Star Trek today is that it like spans kind of like a larger, like currently running Star Trek spans like a huge kind of time scale with you have on one end you have Strange New Worlds, on the other hand, and you have Discovery in the 32nd century and Strange New Worlds in the 23rd century. So in between all that, there's so many opportunities to revisit like different stories that are on bigger time, like civilizations, basically. So we could see the Enderpersians, like in the 32nd
Yeah.
century, and see what they've become, and things like that. There's potential. I'm not saying that's gonna happen, but there's a lot of neat potential with the way Star Trek is kind of like structured these days.
Yes, definitely. There's a lot of potential for very good stories and just very good continuity. We've also been seeing a lot of continuity in the comics region recently with the audio drama that came out. So the Stargazer comic, which finished its run a week or two ago, actually had some characters in it which were first introduced in the No Man's Land audio drama. And I just really love these consistencies between the two and the continuity. And as we're going to get into Prodigy, maybe not next episode, but I think the episode after that, we will see Fadian O'Connor, if the trailer shots are to be believed, in terms of the order of things. Because at the end of this episode, we see Murph in a cocoon.
Right.
I'm sure we won't have, okay, the next half of the season, Murph is just in a cocoon. I'm sure Murph is going to hatch from the cocoon in 1 or 2 episodes, minimum.
Yeah.
And we see
I
Fadian
think so,
O'Connor
too.
in that teaser, in that episode.
What is
when
Murph gonna be? I'm so
Yes.
attached to Murph. I'm kind of nervous that
Yeah,
Murph's
definitely,
gonna be something
considering so
else.
many
Like,
people are really wanting, like, the NYCC plushies of Murph. Which actually, I have one on hand right now. So let me just grab
ooh,
it. Just
yeah,
fill the
let's
room
see it.
while I just grab that. So, yeah.
Okay. By the way, Cake is Eternal. I knew it was a joke. I just thought it would be fun to wax about Klingons,
Yes,
so I hope it didn't feel like I
definitely.
was doing a dressing down on you.
But yeah, it was actually just like at my feet. But it's still in
Oh,
the
you have
bag.
it right.
But there's Murph.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't opened it yet because I don't know why. I just haven't opened it. But this was thanks to we had some of our team go to New York Comic Con, where they showed it off. So there is a Murph.
So cool. Is he
Um,
like squishy like
well, I haven't
like, does
opened
he
the
feel-
bag, so I
So
can't
you
tell
don't
you.
know.
I guess I could do a unbagging on stream, but you know, I think that
You open that
feels like a
Murph in your
milestone
own
or
time.
something. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll just put it there.
But there's all kinds of opportunities. Like I feel
Mm.
like Nickelodeon's famous for slime, so the fact that they have the slime
Oy.
devil, like so like it can.
Yeah.
You never know.
So yeah, we'll see. I think we'll definitely see how Murph changes and whether it's a good change, whether it's bad change, whether their design looks better, worse, same. You know, whether Murph can talk, I think is the biggest thing on my mind. And what voice D. Bradley Baker will give Murph.
That's true. Good
It's going
point.
to be interesting. And also from the fact
Oh my
that,
gosh.
you know, we finally found out what Murph was 2 episodes ago. A melanoid slime worm. Why is
Melanoid
that a
slime.
derogatory term? Why is that an insult? Are we going to find out that Murph goes through like a very emo goth phase of just like, shut up, I'm going to go to my room. Just playing loud music on the Protostar. Is that going to be why people call others melanoid slime worms because they're just annoying? We'll find out.
Yeah, I wonder what or maybe those did you speculate or someone speculated that to them like saying you're cute is an insult, and so he was saying to Wesley that you're cute but like as an insult, not as like a compliment. So who knows?
I did not see that, but
But I also think that like Murph is indestructible. So like
so that
maybe,
brings in an interesting question. Someone from our Discord server, which if
Yes.
anyone wants to join the Trek Central Discord server, there's some links in the description where we talk about Star Trek. Surprisingly enough, someone asked, why doesn't Murph eat the living construct? And that's a really good question.
That is a really good question.
Obviously, I feel like that won't work. But the fact that it hasn't been broached of Murph's indestructible, Murph has eaten a star and photon grenades, why can it not eat this living construct? But I guess
Right.
because it's a living thing. And it could
I
be
mean-
like that one scene from Star Trek Beyond where the circular weapon eats tarantula head girl. I forgot her
Oh
name.
yeah.
Um,
But I forgot how new yeah, it's true.
Yeah, where it eats them. So I guess if Murph tries to eat the living construct, it might eat Murph.
Eat Murph. Or become like more powerful by combining with Murph in some weird way, and that could be a bad thing. Like
That could be a bad
So
thing.
who knows?
But I guess
Yeah, who
KK's
knows what could
Eternal
happen with the
gave a good reason for Murph just has no appetite right now.
Oh, he does. It's true.
So yeah, I definitely could be that.
You brought up an interesting thing that I forgot to mention. I think that one of my speculations is that we're going to discover And I think this is interesting because there's implications. The living construct, I think, is something interesting to pose in Star Trek in this fashion and in this framework of this show that's like also accessible to younger people, right? Like it's a show that's made for a wider audience than a typical current Star Trek series are. Um, but one thing I wonder is like, because there always seems to be a solution of like seeking to understand in Star Trek, or like finding out that the enemy that's like a total enemy actually has more to them, and they end up being an antagonist and not an enemy, right? So I wonder if at some point the living construct might just start liking these kids and like start to like understand, like maybe they try to communicate with it and like actually like get it to change its mind about being a virus. Like that might be interesting, but I don't know.
That could be interesting, but no offense, I don't think that's gonna happen. But one thing which sparked in my mind when you said that, Prodigy could definitely have us possibly witness first contact of the Valnakat again.
Oh yeah.
Which would be a definite way of spinning this. There's a right way to do first contact. There's
right.
They aren't the antagonists. The Diviner just did this because he lost his world. He lost his family. He lost his friends. He lost his loved ones.
Right.
However, that would be an interesting one because, Solomon was destroyed by a civil war. Some people are like, yeah, let's go to space. Other people are like, no, we like to be by ourselves and isolationist. And that caused them to blow up their planet. Or at least blow up their cities and everything and leave only one person left.
Yeah, exactly.
So
two people.
How a kid show could then be like, this is how you resolve civil conflict in a society. Prodigy is capable of a lot of things. We shouldn't think of it as lesser because it's a family show. It's a kid show,
right? Exactly.
As we have seen from these last couple of episodes. But I do not think it is, no offense, capable of showing how to solve civil differences between a society on the brink of civil war.
It may not.
It could surprise us.
Yeah, it could surprise us, but I think that's going to be like, at least I don't think it'll necessarily get preachy in that way, but I do think that they will provide. I like the idea. I hope they do explore it, because whatever their solution is, I think it could only be better.
I think definitely from having Gwyn there to help ease the idea of, I have become part of a crew, of meeting other people and finding bonds with them. The bonds of family are what Zero was able to use to break free of the collectives, same as Jean-Luc did in Best of Both Worlds.
I love this. You're
and
me
showing that isolation isn't the key. By finding the bonds between us and people who think differently, look differently, do we become greater? And I think that could definitely be an interesting way they could tell this. Don't hide yourself away out of fear. Embrace the unknown. It's okay to fear it, but keep an open mind and don't be scared of it.
That's very cool.
Or as I'm mixing my Star franchises here, but as Yoda said, fear leads to hate leads to anger,
hate leads to anger
leads to suffering. It seems like Aaron Wolke is in the chat right now.
Aaron says, so you'll have to wait and see.
I would take that as I was 100% correct. So I will see you on Solemn on episode 20. But it's nice for you to drop by. And while we're talking about Prodigy and what we loved about this episode, unfortunately, we are going to have to hate you because Garavik was killed for this episode.
Yes.
But no. But yeah, it was a good episode, and I'm looking forward to what the rest of Prodigy has in store. yeah, do you have any other things to talk about from this episode?
No,
Um,
this what I haven't had a chance to really talk about this episode since it premiered on Thursday, so I'm
yeah.
really excited and happy that I got to talk about it with you, my friend, and
Why,
the
thank
audience
you.
also. It was a good conversation and
Mm,
lots of neat ideas. I mean, like what I love about this show, Lower Decks, all of the shows, like, I know there's stuff that folks speculate every week and people certainly get, things right, but all of these shows are just so entertaining and exciting. Like right now, like I I just want to know what happens. Like I want I want the whole season like right now because it's like I can't. It's so hard to wait a week to to
mm,
like really find out what happens. So good
uh,
job, production people,
yes.
writers, directors, everyone. You guys are doing a great job with making this Trekkie want more.
Mm. So Aaron Watke says he was the bravest among us.
He
In
was.
regard to Yarovik. And yeah, like we said, I think hearing him in his final recording was amazing. It made me
Yeah.
slightly tear up. I will not be afraid to admit that.
I
So
can now
yeah.
collect a pension now that he's declared killed in action. I can. I'm just
And we have a question of we want to know why the little skins sewn together for uniforms were so little. Tiny green animals, small green fruits. And apparently the idea was it's vegan leather.
I love
Uh,
that too.
so, yeah, that's nice.
There you go, Jill.
Yeah. Oh, so let's go with the fruit. So yeah, it was green fruit that they have on. Did we have a name for the planet? We didn't we?
Oh, Aaron, is there a name for the planet?
Yes.
Also, before we go, Dom, one
Yeah.
last thing. Hopefully he's still there.
Yeah.
One last thing I want to say is, what do you think what is your headcanon of what the circumstances are that led to Garavik ending up on the Enterprise's
Okay, so
planet? Because
that's
in
a
the
good
play,
question.
yeah.
Yes. That is a good question. That's something which I wanted to talk about, but I forgot
Oh,
to
good.
talk about.
Okay.
So they say that, no Federation ship has been there for 100 years.
100 years.
And I think there was no record. I think they said in the episode there was no record of the Enterprise being at this planet.
Well,
So
the
we can.
stage play has a whole scenario that's going on the Enterprise, and apparently there was some folks needed help, but they couldn't interfere. But then the brave Ensign said he'll do it, so it was like a weird thing, like
Yes,
you know what I mean,
there
like
was that.
so. Yeah.
Um, but Janeway says something about Kirk and Sulu, and they were legends in Starfleet, but they weren't here. I'll probably have to reread that.
Oh yeah, yeah. There was
Watch
something like that. Yeah.
So it could be just Garavik, or as we said, it's a game of telephone. They misinterpreted what Garavik was saying.
Right. Yeah. There's that whole thing. Yeah. Of course.
So
But I was just curious. Yeah.
it could be that. And we know Garavik crashed on the planet, wasn't meaning to make first contact with the people, but then they found him and healed him.
And poor thing, he was in this situation where like he couldn't move this shuttle. It was going to create radiation sickness if others came near it. He had to create this like crazy gallows. Well, we don't even know if he called it that, but he had to create it. He had to create like a crazy scenario to put the fear into these people so they wouldn't actually go there, and then promising them that one day Starfleet would come. So it was like a wild thing that like a wild scenario that he was ended up in. But yeah, I'm like curious what led up to it. That's my big
we do have a lot of examples of shuttles going through wormholes and leading up
right.
to strange planets, from that Ferengi episode in Voyager.
Absolutely, yeah, that's true.
Which I can't remember the name of the top of my head. False Prophet, I think, maybe.
I think so, yeah.
And there's a lot of other examples of just ships ending up in weird places.
False prophets, you were right.
Yes, thank you. Wow, I'm impressed by that. So we can see. Jill says that the planet might have been, the planet was 3N50N. I don't know if they're making that up.
No, because Aaron says, so the planet was a name, but I believe there was a long-range scanner detection designation that was a number seen on the Protostar console. So that's probably what that might be, Planet
Oh,
3N 50N.
also, I'll bring this up because this was also something that I wanted to discuss for this episode. Was they had to bring Enterprisings onto the ship to pilot it into the dilithium cave to rescue our other crew. Janeway said, okay, I can't autopilot because my hologram will disappear due to the subspatial interference. So why were the holographic consoles on the bridge still there during the distortion? And I see that you have some sort of answer. I have an answer too. Whether it's the right answer, who knows? But
so we've seen it in the holodeck. Certain objects can be replicated rather than holographically made and taken out of the holodeck, such as like a glass of water or whatnot. So I imagine that to create so it is holographic, but it's solidified for the time being, and then the holographic circuits will just deconstruct it when it's no longer needed. But it needs to be more than a hologram to function properly with the ship. So there's a subroutine built in to make them actual solid like things and stuff like that. So
that's a possibility.
I don't know. It's
the
like
other possibility is obviously a lot of the consoles on the bridge of the Protostar do have holographic components.
Right.
And since they're a integral part of the consoles, they should have fail-safes. They shouldn't go offline as easy compared to a hologram who has more stuff going on behind the scenes. And Aaron Wilkie just says, she said, a program of her complexity or the autopilots would be knocked offline, but not all holograms. So
there you go. That's simple. The simple best answer.
And I believe one of the storyboard people for this episode posted their storyboards online, and it showed that the whole bridge actually became a TOS bridge, whereas the final product was just some of the consoles and the chair. But in the storyboards, you actually saw that it was a small like TOS view screen. It wasn't like the big dome of the Protostar. So I just thought that was an interesting way to link it. And one other thing was with holographic consoles, this was first kind of introduced in Picard.
Disco 3, right? Oh, Picard, you're right.
Yeah, Picard. And I saw a lot of discussion online, particularly from YouTuber E.C. Henry, of his version of holographic consoles, which is it basically creates holographic consoles of terminals So if you're from the TOS era, it makes TOS consoles, and it just rewrites them to the configuration of all the actual physical hardware. If you're from if you're a Klingon, it makes Klingon terminals. If you're a Cardassian, it makes Cardassian terminals. So I think this episode was very much, even if it wasn't inspired by that, it was very much two people coming to the same idea at the same time. And what he also said, everyone agreed off camera the Constitution class bridge would just be cool, so they were cool with it. But there we go. That was All the World's a Stage. Written by Aaron Wilkie, who's in chat right now. So thank you for joining us here. Is there any other things?
Yeah, it just made me realize that what you described kind of also happens in Discovery. When they refit Discovery, they say they installed all this like new stuff, but they made it look the same as the 23rd century things, because so that they could go right into action. And it's kind of like what you said, it like probably overlays this thing, and then that interfaces with the modern technology in the same way. It's like a bridge to that technology. It's cool.
A final question. I don't want to end it while we're still getting answers from Aaron. Was the question of, was that the same Galileo 7 from the TOS episode, or just the same class? Because we do have the Galileo, and then we have the Galileo 2 in the original series.
And I think the 3 made it on screen in Star Trek 5? No. Or maybe that was just also just Galileo? I don't remember.
I do not have the best knowledge of Star Trek V.
Or was
I
that
will
Copernicus?
say.
I can't remember.
But yeah, it was the same Galileo seen in the later episodes, like Immunity Syndrome, later to be replaced by the Galileo 2. So this was how it got replaced, or how it, before it got replaced, it went missing over this planet.
And Garvik too. So Garvik went missing somewhere around that time. Interesting.
Yeah. And obviously the Enterprise wouldn't know he was there, otherwise they would have made a rescue effort. So they just lost the ship, and the fate of David Garvik was not known until, I guess, a bit later, because even Starfleet doesn't know of Garvik's fate at the moment. It's just these guys. We could see Janeway and the gang come to this planet, and
they seem to be tailing. Yeah, they seem to be tailing the kids.
But
the
Galileo wouldn't be there anymore because it blew up in the cave.
That's right.
So
that's right.
They wouldn't have the recording. Hopefully, the Protostar made a copy of that recording. Because one, it's a really good recording.
It is really good. It's true.
And two, it would be a shame if that sort of thing was lost. A man's almost last words.
It's not lost in my heart.
Yes, not lost in all of our hearts. But yeah, I think with that answer, and obviously I don't want to keep you as long as we've kept previous people in our chat, such as Jack with Terry Metalis. But hopefully we can see you in later streams. It would be great if we could have you on for streams to talk about that. That would be amazing. It'll be enshrined in the Starfleet Museum. That would be great. They could have a replica of the Ensign statue from New Enterprise, and have you press a button in a museum and it plays his final log. There we go. Headcanning it. So that'd be great. But yeah, everybody else in the chat, we thank you for joining us for this discussion of Prodigy. Hopefully we'll be more regular with our Discovery live streams. It's just been a really hectic month with Comic-Cons and travel and everything, so it should be more stable now. And hopefully you all enjoyed this. We thank you all. And yeah, do you have any last words, Starfleet Boy?
No, thank you, Dom. Thanks for having me. If folks want to, they can also check out Starfleet Boy on YouTube as well as Twitter, as long as it lasts. I don't know what's going on with Twitter, but I'm there until none of you guys are there. So I'll stick around. And but if you also want, I have a TikTok, which I'm not frequent on. Yeah, I know. Are you on TikTok, Dom? Are you on TikTok?
No. I am not. I've been looking at like Mastodon and things like that.
I'm on there too, but I can't figure it out yet.
I haven't figured it out yet, so I'm just gonna stay on Twitter until it burns, or until someone buys it for like $8.
Yes.
Because at the rate it's going, that's how much it'll be worth. But yeah,
actually, long story. We won't talk about it here.
Okay. And hopefully we'll get Text Trek on next week, and for the next shows. He's not here this week, as you can see, but you can go follow him at Text Trek, where he does discussions of these episodes as well. I think on Fridays or Saturdays.
Yeah, they had, speaking of Aaron, he was on two Aarons, Aaron Walkie and Aaron Harvey, who's the one of the writers of the official Star Trek animation guide, were on the show. So it was a pretty cool episode.
Oh, I'll definitely have to check that out if that was talking of this Prodigy episode, because it'd be nice to hear some stuff from there. But yeah, as always, thank you for being here. And I guess for this particular episode, we have to do the wrong Vulcan salute.
Oh, yes.
And say, live logs and proper.
Live logs and proper.
There we go. See you next week. Bye.